Are you trying to establish your brand as a thought leader? Start a podcast, invite industry experts to be guests on your show, and watch your brand become the prime resource for decision makers in your industry. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to B2B Growth. I'm your host for today's episode, Logan Lyles with Sweetfish Media. I'm joined today by Chad Baldwin. He's the VP of Sales and Business Development over at Koddi. Chad, how you doing today, sir?
Doing well. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you. The sun is shining here in Colorado today, even though we've had snow in the last week, but it's finally feeling like springtime and it's Friday. So I'm feeling really good at the time that we're recording this, man. Well, we're going to be talking about some sales leadership lessons in early stage startups, getting from zero to that 50 million mark. I'm really excited to hear some of your lessons learned and some thoughts for sales leaders who are sitting in that seat right now, trying to get to 50 million, trying to get beyond there or some point in the early stages of growth. Before we do that, though, Chad, I would love for you to give listeners a little bit of background on yourself and also what you and the team at Koddi are up to these days.
Sounds good, Logan. So nice to be chatting with everybody. I run sales and BD at Koddi. I've been in software and sales for about 23 years. And about half of my career, Logan, was in product management, so building out solutions for customers, and then moved over into the sales side. And I've been in a number of growth startups, both venture-backed as well as private. So I'm excited to share at least some of the observations and experience that may be able to help you as you're thinking about growing your company. Currently at Koddi, if you're not familiar with this space, Koddi is a digital advertising optimization solution. So we help advertising dollars make folks more money, higher ROI, and we're focused specifically on travel. We work with a lot of hotel partners, cruises, etc. So any travel marketer who is trying to make money by advertising and driving new customers and bookings from Google, Facebook, TripAdvisor, Trivago, etc. And the company is about 120 people. I joined last year, but we've experienced some dramatic growth and helping to contribute to that as have some good experience to bring to the table. So that's a little bit about me, Logan.
Yeah, I love it. So we're going to be talking about some key pillars to building out and growing your sales team and really driving revenue for your organization in these early stages of fast growth. We're going to be talking about some aspects of focus, execution, and hiring. If you're going to build a team, you've got to hire a team, right? So as we work through each of these, excited to have you unpack some tactical lessons learned. So let's talk about the focus area first. Let's focus on that, if you will. Sorry, my kids would be rolling their eyes at me with a bad dad pun. But let's go there a little bit. In an early stage company, especially if you're working with a very innovative founder or a group of founders, sometimes there can be this pull to go into a lot of different directions. But you've mentioned before that sticking to those ideal clients that are really at the very core of what you do and that you can serve well is something that sales leaders should think of early in these stages. Is that right?
That's exactly right. I think that, there are a number of factors when you're joining a company, and the stages of the company are all different. But the common theme is the need to focus. And, I've been in companies that are 10 people in, 40 people in, 60, 80. And these are all, stages of growth where focus is kind of job one, and it changes a little bit over time. And I'll speak to a few aspects here. One, as a salesperson or sales leader coming into a company, the first thing you want to determine is the company focused, and can you help increase and accelerate business for them? And that means making sure that there is a minimum viable product, right? There's a solution or a service or a software product that meets the need. And the time to start selling is very important, as it can take a little while. Certainly I've seen deal cycles from 30 days up to a year, but you want to make sure that whatever you're talking about and the challenges that customers have, that you can actually solve, right? And that's sometimes a moving target. When you're 10 to 15 people in, you might solve a small problem. When you're 80 people in and there's a more mature product, then you can handle more. But the key thing is, as you're growing, you're going to get lots of opportunities to solve lots of different problems for customers. And it's very important that you decide and align on what is that problem that you're trying to solve for which type of customer. And, I'd say that, startups attract big thinkers, and that's fun. But in the case of trying to drive and grow money, it's all about really aligning to something very specific and focusing in on that. So steering away from all the blue sky ideas, but more so to get to the right customers. And the interesting part here is that as a salesperson, your job is to find out that ideal customer, because you're going to become who you want them, or your customer wants you to be, right? You're going to listen to them, you're going to grow, you're going to incorporate their feedback into a roadmap, and you want that customer aligned with your vision too. And so generally, there are early adopters who will see your vision. They may see that there's some warts in your solution. It's not quite there, but they like you and they like the team, and they're going to bet on you. And you're going to have a real vision match between those ideal customers. And it makes take some time to find those. At times there will be VCs that introduce you, friends of friends. And oftentimes those early customers are not the biggest in the industry. They're more of the early adopting innovators that are looking to make change and run quickly. So that's kind of the first thing. And it's good to definitely have conversations internally and make sure you're aligned with your CEO and head of product, head of marketing, to get to those folks. It's very much sharpshooting and not a broad landscape of trying to get a ton of deals in at the same time.
I think that's such valuable advice, because especially when you start to see all that blue sky, all that open green field, it's like we want to run after everything. And when you do that, you can get out of breath and lost out there in that open space very quickly. But as you mentioned, staying laser focused on those early wins, those early people that believe in you and share the same vision, doubling down on those relationships and on the victories there probably sets you up to figure out, okay, what are our typical deals going to look like? What does a good deal look like for us? What is the right type of customer, and help marketing to develop out those buyer personas and those sorts of things. If you not stay focused on those early wins as if, sales leadership just kind of sits back and rests on your laurels, but you focus on them in that way that they kind of help chart the path forward, right?
That's right. It's truly, these first customers are your partners. Your earliest folks hopefully are going to be with you long term. They're very aligned, and you establish deeper relationships with them. It's a fortunate time in terms of growth in a company to find these folks as they become long-term partners for you. Now, as you said, Logan, there are lots of distractions. And if there is, PR or your funding announcements, et cetera, you're going to attract folks and talk to folks that are not right for you. And they may not be right long term. They may not be right now. And the hard part is that as a sales leader, your job is not just to drive any revenue, it's to drive good revenue. And good revenue is that's coming from a client that's aligned with your vision, that recognizes the value of your software or your solution, and can push you to grow. And the most interesting thing is I have been in this for a while, is that means saying no to clients. It means turning away from things and nicely making sure that they know when is the right time to approach or where you're focused right now. And that's a hard thing for a salesperson to do, but it's also not just your job. It's involving other key leadership members. So whether it's product or marketing and the CEO, I like to say that sales is like the bouncer in a club. The bouncer in the front makes the club, right? So who you let in will determine the nature of the club. And that is from a cultural perspective, from a solution perspective, but you'll see how closing those partnerships and driving success within them will create a virtuous cycle of success. If you see clients that aren't going to do that for you, then to steer away. So that's the magic in the beginning.
Yeah, man, I've never heard that analogy of sales being the bouncer at the club, but that makes a ton of sense. And what you said there, I just think is so good. If people want to hit back and just listen to that nugget, jot that down somewhere. Your job as sales and sales leadership, especially in an early stage company, is not just to drive revenue, but to drive good revenue. I just love what you're advocating there for. So as we talk about, focus in the early stage, we talk about execution in the next stage. And really, you've talked about it here a little bit. As you move to executing on and building on those early successes with those early adopters, it comes a lot from aligning with your CEO, your head of product, your head of marketing to leverage those existing relationships and those existing wins to kind of get to the next level, right, Chad?
That's right. I think here, your company may be in a new innovative space where there are no existing competitors, or there are few competitors and they're early. It may be that you're a better mousetrap for an existing space, but making sure that when you're talking to customers, the first thing is to align around value and having a very clear definition of that, for the customer, and driving that internally. Right. And the value pieces are going to be, clearly, hey, can we make more revenue, more profit for you as a customer? Can we reduce your OpEx or headcount? And these are higher level goals that your solution needs to map into, but you want them to be measurable. You want them to be clearly at the end of a process in terms of a sales cycle, to have a sense of, listen, in putting us in place at 30, 60, 90 days, here's what we're going to be able to regroup and say, right? And that means, one, getting alignment from your key counterpart at the client side, but two, their peers, their senior management, that expectations are very clear, right? So your job as a salesperson is a meaning maker, and creating that meaning is around aligning behind the success criteria, the value of the solution, and then following up and making sure that you're aligned, because there are going to be many distractions and things that pull you off, but you want to stay at that higher level. The other thing is that you're really part of a broader team. And while you're the tip of the spear, you want your product team, your engineers to know about that value and drive behind it. Because if at the end of 90 days you hit your mark, it's because the product, the engineering team, the designers, everybody along the way knows it, and you celebrate the success of that client, right? And I encourage that in terms of, if you can celebrate execution and success as not when the deal's signed, but when you deliver that first milestone that's measurable, that's sizable, and then you get clients excited about it. And the excitement, this is amazing how old school business is, right? And you as a sales leader inside a company, you'll talk about ABM and marketing and all the materials and assets. And those are all great. But at the core of it, you're going to make one client happy, and they're going to be, out at a conference, they're going to talk to their friends, and word of mouth is incredibly powerful. So you first drive towards that success and focusing and executing for a customer. They see it up and down within their team, and then make them referenceable, right? Because you drive great success for somebody, they're going to turn around and say, hey, I'm happy to jump on a call. I'm happy to meet with XYZ. And that trust is incredibly valuable to utilize and leverage into other deals. So it is focusing on the execution. It is driving success, turning that success into trust, making it referenceable, and using that to drive to other deals.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you're talking about there, Chad, because, if your goal initially as a sales leader of a startup is just to get as much revenue and as many deals in the door as possible, and none of those people are you really driving great results with your execution, it's not quite the right fit, you kind of made this deal fit and those sorts of things, then you're just going to have to repeat that the next month, the next quarter, versus what you're talking about here is really finding those people that you can serve best and doubling down there, both in finding those key early adopters and then doubling down on executing well for them, because now it starts to snowball. Instead of resetting every month or every quarter, you're gaining more momentum as they start to advocate for you in the market. I mean, it just makes a lot of sense. It sounds almost just very intuitive, but I can see where a lot of startups get that wrong by going for, like you said, just kind of getting distracted, going out into all of the open blue sky or green field, whatever picture we want to paint here, and just kind of getting lost, going back to your first point of focus. Now, as you're getting to the next stage, you're gaining momentum and you've got some pretty good product market fit and you're developing advocates in the market. You've really got to focus on now being that bouncer to the club. Again, who else are you going to let in the door on your sales team? And so that's where I think we need to spend a couple of minutes for sales leaders and share some advice around hiring and building the team, especially during these early days. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that aspect as well as you navigate these treacherous waters of early days startup as a sales leader.
Sure, Logan. So I think in the beginning, these are some of the hardest salespeople to find, which is what I would say is you want a sales ninja. There's a great article by Raj Dadada over from Bloomreach, but he and I talk a lot about this in the beginning, is that if the sales ninja is really an athlete, right? They can handle themselves alone. They're very sharp and can handle a lot of curveballs. Their background tends to not be that sales hunter, that comes from a big company that's looking for the big comp plan. It's more of someone that's very solution focused, very solution oriented, and their background may be a little unique, meaning they've come from perhaps sales engineering, solution consulting, product management. They're very focused on the problem set and the solution space, because they're going to need to be a lot of things in one. A subject matter expert. They're going to need to have some technical knowledge, industry knowledge. And they're going to need to be great communicators in getting the product team aligned, the clients aligned, the execution or client services teams aligned. And a lot of those activities you might not see later if you're a company of 100 or 200 or 500, right? Where you play only one role in a deal. You have to play all these roles and be the central hub and communication bus between them. So hire an athlete, hire a ninja. And sometimes this is, certainly partnering with internal folks. The CEO may be involved in deals, the head of product involved in deals, but you are orchestrating a team to close deals. So it's one of the most important roles. And as you scale out, you will bring in more subject matter experts that are probably going to be sales engineers or solution consultants, and then you'll tag team on deals. But as you get into, $6 million, $10 million in revenue, you're going to start to staff those ancillary, roles that can partner up. But in the beginning, those key sales ninjas are going to be your go-to people. And that lesson is not just for when you're at the sub 1 million or sub 5 million. It's, hey, you need to open up EMEA. You need to open up APAC. It's that same type of role you'll go find again. So anytime there's new opportunity where you need to press in, these types of characters are going to be great. The other piece that I'm going to advise is that you need to be careful around targets and incentives plans, because it is great to have somebody come in and put a comp plan together that's very exciting. You've got targets that you need to hit. But in the beginning, it's very difficult to predict how much revenue a person can deliver, how long a sales cycle is going to be. So you want to get a ninja who you can align on the behaviors that you're trying to incent. And oftentimes what I've done is structured in the beginning around MBOs that are more the behaviors we're trying to incent. And within that, not all money is created equal. You just don't want a salesperson who's going to bring anybody into the club. You want the right kind of partners. And you can incent these by, hey, here's a target list of accounts. Here are the 10 accounts we want to go after. And I'm going to spiff or bonus you around those named accounts. You don't want to make it overly complex in the beginning or overly process oriented for those folks to handle. As you get the right sales ninja, they're going to be able to do that for you. You just need to give them some running room and create some wide boundaries and a good enough incentive plan that they're going to make money and enough money to support their family and grow. As often these early sales ninjas are also incented by stock to do the right thing for the company, right? To turn away deals if necessary and focus on the right guys. So
Yeah, I love that. I mean, we've seen that in our team where you need to be able to wear more hats in both sales and other functional roles as you're growing an early stage startup. And then also, I like what you're saying there. I've always been a believer, whether you're a startup or not, that you want to incent the right things. You want to put the incentive where you want the motivation to be. And there's this balance, right? You don't want it to be overly complicated. So many sales people need a degree in calculus to be able to figure out what their commission is going to be this month or this quarter. We don't want to go that route. But if you can do some very simple things to kind of point your initial sales team in the right direction to go get the things that are going to be the biggest levers for your organization, then those little tweaks can make a big difference. I love what you're sharing there. And I think it's some very practical advice for sales leaders in early stage startups. Chad, this has been a fantastic conversation. As you and I were chatting a little bit offline, I've had my ears wide open here as, I'm growing the sales team here at Sweetfish. And I know a lot of salespeople and sales leaders are in similar boats. If anybody listening to this would like to take the conversation a little further, maybe dig into something that you talked about, ask some follow-up questions, or just stay connected with you to find your content or stay in touch for the future, what's the best way for them to reach out? Where can they find you, man?
Feel free to reach in and connect with me on LinkedIn, Chad Baldwin. If I've got time, I will certainly try to answer anything specific or jump on a call. As you and I talked about, I'm definitely 110% focused on growing Koddi and trying to stay true to that. So I'm glad to have finally arranged this to spend some time and share a little thinking, but happy to do that more if I can, is love to give back and help folks as they're starting out here.
Yeah, well, you've done a great job of that today already, Chad. I really appreciate you spending some time with me and sharing some of these lessons learned and strategies with listeners, especially those sitting in sales leadership seats in early stage startups. Thank you so much for your time, Chad. I really appreciate it.
Great to talk to you, Logan. You take care.
We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big 3, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.